Here is a young lady who doubts Jewish indigeneity, and she takes Gal Gadot, the Israeli actress, to task. Let's see if we could take her back to task and throw out some of the garbage.
Gadot said she's an indigenous person of Israel. The same week that Israel has killed over 500 people, 200 of them children, in just 3 days, because Israel is a settler colony.
Wait. What does one thing have to do with another?
I don't know, but I just want to point out that if she's saying that 500 Gazans were killed, that's 500 descendants of colonizers. Number one, so she doesn't know who's who, and never believe Hamas numbers. Number two, number three. Yeah, this lady. Every child that's killed is a tragedy, and every child that's killed is killed because Hamas puts them there. Because Hamas puts its army behind its children, underneath their apartment buildings, underneath their mosques and schools and hospitals. And if Israel wanted to strike Hamas the strongest way on day one with all of its bombs, if it didn't have anyone tying its hand behind its back, the way to know how to target Hamas on day one would have been to strike every UN building, every UNRWA building, mosque, school, and hospital in Gaza, because we know, and it's known, and it's been documented before and since, that those were Hamas headquarters. And to say to the world, we condemn Hamas for all the civilian non-combatant deaths that are happening right now because they're hiding behind them, but we're not going to let you hide behind them. Because in a war is war, and war is between two people. It's not like going after a criminal, not like going after a bank robber. War is between two peoples, and those people elected Hamas and supported Hamas. And this phony business that we've heard since October 7th, the old 9/11 refrain, oh, Gaza's not the enemy, Hamas is the enemy. Oh, it's Al-Qaeda that's the problem, not Afghanistan or whatnot. In the case of Gaza, Gaza's the problem. And we could have nailed Hamas hard on day one if we'd struck those places and made it very clear and spoke with perfect frankness about who the enemy is. And every UNRWA building and every UNRWA UN person who's been talking ever since October 7th, defending Hamas, condemning Israel, they're guilty, they're accomplices, they're mouthpieces for Hamas, and they should be afraid and they should be in hiding because we know who the enemy is, and Al Jazeera as well.
But I just didn't even understand her logic. So what if, let's say your numbers are right, which they aren't. What does that have to do with you're indigenous or not? You think indigenous people don't have enemies that they have to push back? What does that have to do with anything? It's they killed a lot of people. And you know why? Because they're settlers. What does that have to do with it? Maybe we kill a lot of people because there's a lot of bad guys trying to destroy us. What does that have to do with it? Like, what's the logical flow?
Murray has a great line that goes right to this. And he says, tell me what you accuse the Jews of, and I'll tell you what you're guilty of or what you think you're guilty of. Right. And in the case of this woman and the milieu that she was raised in, they believe America is guilty of colonialism and genocide and all this, but it's just a few hundred years too late to condemn America. So they're looking for someone to unload their guilt on. And They say, they buy this story that Israel is the colonizer, non-indigenous, don't belong here. They dump it on Israel.
Very good. Let's keep going.
Someone needs to tell Gal Gadot, or should I say Gal Greenstein, because her parents only Hebraized their last name like a few years before she was born. She's Polish, Austrian, German, and Czech by her own admission. So Gal Greenstein, you and me, we're relatives from Eastern Europe, not Palestine. And you cannot be indigenous to a settler colony.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's get this straight.
Yeah. Let's
is that a sin to change your name to Hebraizing? I didn't think that was like a bad thing. I myself always wanted to Hebraize my name, but that's a separate topic. But they
call it, in fact, in their literature, that woman's literature, you know what they call that? They call that decolonization. Right. Decolonization, because you're returning to your indigenous roots. Why is Gal Gadot? Why was she Gal Greenstein? Because we got kicked out by Roman colonizers. And our people got scattered. And yes, we had to go to this place and that place, and we traveled, but we always remained Jews. We always remained indigenous to Israel. And many of us, more than half of us, have returned to there in the past century.
So being Gal Gadot is decolonialization.
Yeah. She should be applauding that. God bless you. She should be saying to Gal Gadot for embracing your indigenous heritage and your Jewish heritage and Hebraizing your name and rejecting that European Greenstein that you picked up somewhere in Europe. But
it's beautiful.
These are the
It's
narrative
beautiful.
warfare.
And then
that's
also, what does it mean? It's a settler colony. A settler colony. What does that mean? You mean we've returned? And that's before you came on the show, Jake. I said that one of the things that Israel has missed in its quote unquote hasbara is that Israel should always call itself the Third Commonwealth. Like
Yes.
that should almost be like the thing that you don't. Sometimes you don't even have to say Israel. You could say Israel,
Clarity
the
in 2
Jewish
words
state.
right there.
What's that?
Yes. It's clear. You're bringing clarity in 2 words. It's the
Right.
Third Jewish Commonwealth.
The Third Commonwealth, but just say it like all the time. Be like, yeah, and the Third Commonwealth. Like it's Israel, the Jewish state, or the Third Commonwealth. Just use that term all the time. Make that term just the way we talk about Israel. That would help so much against all those people who think that Israel was born in 1948. You're a settler colony. Yeah, we've had 2 states here, and if anybody's a settler colony, it's the so-called Palestine that's trying to erase our identity. But the point is that frankly, I just feel that Israel has not used that terminology enough, and so okay, she's able to do that.
And let's recap, because it's worth doing 1,000 times if it's worth doing once. Our friend Ryan Bellarose's 5 points of indigenous identity, which are ties to the land, the language that comes from the land, the culture, the spirituality, blood ties to the land, having your ethnogenesis on the land by all those metrics that are adopted by everyone in that field of colonization and indigeneity for every other people in the earth except for the Jews. By those metrics, we are the indigenous ones. And the Arabs who came from Arabia and colonized 6 million square miles of the Middle East and North Africa and brought their language and culture and religion and even bloodlines everywhere through conquest. They're the colonizers. It's really very simple. And the only way that you don't get it is if you deny Jewish identity and you deny history. And that's part of the game. And that's what's going on here. And by the way, she talks about, 200 children. Those all look like adult bodies and body bags, if they're even bodies. I've seen enough.
I don't even want to argue that. I don't want to argue like how many have been killed, how many have not been killed. Yeah. We're fighting a war. There are people going to die. You start a war with us. That's what happens. I don't know what the real numbers are, so I'm not going to argue that. But it's obvious that the use of the term children is in order to be an emotional trigger and to get us to stop the war against the jihad. It's basically another way. It's this article that she has behind her is just another way. By the way, it's by Al Jazeera, a Qatari mouthpiece.
Yes.
It's just another way to hide behind civilians. If it's true or it's not true, they're hiding behind civilians. Let's keep going with this person.
Because a settler colony, by definition, is not indigenous.
Wait, but you called it a settler colony, and now you're saying by the definition that I gave it, it's not indigenous? Okay.
Right, by the term that she misapplied, the Jews are not indigenous.
And Israel is a settler colony committing genocide. Gal, I'd like to read you a little from my book, Genocide Bad, novel concept, from a chapter talking about whether or not, Israeli Jews can be indigenous to Palestine. It comes from the 9th chapter of the book entitled Jews Are Entitled to Palestine, which looks at 4 different arguments for why Jews are supposedly entitled to Palestine. The first one being because the Bible said so. Spoiler alert, no, it doesn't. The second...
What do you mean it doesn't?
She's never read it. She doesn't believe in it. She thinks it's all a lie. It's not real history.
Wait a minute.
It was all written in the 7th century BCE by someone that Moses didn't write it. He wasn't there. Everything's fake.
Yeah, but wait. But Moses didn't write it. Okay. But the Bible does say
in Egypt, the whole story's a lie. God doesn't exist. Jews are ruining Western civilization by bringing morality we don't like.
The Bible doesn't say that the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people.
Oh yeah,
but it does over and over again. I mean, okay, you want to say the Bible's bogus? That's fine. That's your problem. But like, don't tell me what the Bible says. I mean, it's in the book. You can look it up on Wikipedia.
It's even right there in the 10 Commandments. Honor your mother and father so that you will prosper and have long years on the land that Lord your God has given you. It's right in the 10 Commandments.
That's right.
And so many other places.
Part of the chapter is Jews are entitled to Palestine because international law says so. Spoiler alert. No, it doesn't.
What do you think about that, Jake?
Oh, yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. Except when you say we need to throw out international law and apply new laws because this is a great one. This is a great one because Jordan occupied Judea and Samaria in 1948 and kept it for 19 years. If the Jews take it back, now it's occupied territory an illegal occupation. And by that logic that we hear from the left and in the Ivy League schools, if Ukraine actually wins back Crimea and sends some Ukrainians, allows them to go live there, that's settler colonialism. And those are illegal settlers, those Ukrainians who go and live in Crimea. But international law, when it comes to the Jews, it gets thrown out the window, and it's all based on politics and wishful thinking and self-interest, not international law. She doesn't know anything about international law.
Right. I love these spoiler alerts. She's like, spoiler alert. I never read it. Let's keep going here.
The fourth part of the chapter is Jews are entitled to Palestine because some of them were born there, and you'll have to read the book to see what I have to say about that. Third part of the chapter takes on the idea that Jews are...
Yeah, go ahead.
For a sec. Okay. This is coming from someone who's in the political camp that there should be no borders. People should be allowed to live wherever they want.
Right.
But not Jews. Spoiler alert, not Jews.
Okay.
Jews shouldn't be allowed to live in Israel.
Okay, but look, to be fair, she's talking about sovereignty, though. She's talking about why there should be a Jewish state, why people have a right to a Jewish state.
But she's talking about individuals when she talks about because they were born there. She's talking about individuals. And when they jump to talking about individuals from people who are coming from a camp.
Right. Right. But I mean, I don't think anybody argues that Israel has a right to be Israel because Jews are born here. I don't think that that's a correct. I don't think that's a correct. No, I don't think anybody says.
No, you have from the Palestinians. Because you have from Mahmoud Abbas. You have. I mean, there was a speech he gave last week where he said when he has a Palestinian state, there will not be one Jew allowed in that state. And he's talking about even ones who were born here. It doesn't matter. And it's not just sovereignty. He's talking about kicking out individuals. He's talking about ethnic cleansing. And what she's promoting is ethnic cleansing of Jews, even though they're
wait, Jake, hold on. Right now we're dealing with her arguments.
Okay.
The first one she said was that the Bible does not say that the Jewish people have a right to land of Israel, but it does.
But it does.
And the second one is international law. She didn't mention the San Remo Accords, the mandate for Palestine under the League of Nations, and those laws do not grant Jewish rights in the land of Israel, but they recognize Jewish rights in the land of Israel. They recognize our indigeneity.
Yes.
Then she talked about something which I have never claimed is a rationale for rights, that Jews are born in the land of Israel. I don't think that that's a rationale for a state, just like there are Arabs born in this land, and I don't think that grants them necessarily status as a country. They may have individual rights, but certainly not national rights. So I'm not sure what she's talking about.
I'm filling in context that she left out. I think that she's getting to this point. She's coming from conversations that I've seen on college campuses that Jews should be kicked out of Israel. Jews should be ethnically cleansed and kicked out of Israel because
no doubt she believes that.
Go back to Europe. She doesn't discuss or explain right there where she's coming from. So I was filling in the gaps that's where she was coming from.
No doubt that she believes that Jews should be ethnically. She believes in the destruction of Israel. Let's not mince words. But right now I'm just dealing with her particular arguments. Okay,
let's go back to Palestine because they are indigenous there, and let's just dive into what like history and research and the meanings of words has to say. And Gal, I would love to send you an early copy of this.
It's not Gal, it's Gal, but okay.
Book, have your publicist send me your mailing address and I'll get it right in the mail to you. So I grew up believing, and I think most Ashkenazi Jews believe this, that even though we were from Europe, at some point our people had migrated from Palestine. But then I read Shlomo Sand, and this idea that I grew up believing that I came from Palestine, that there was some mass exile of Jews from Canaan into Europe, is as bogus as the Exodus.
Why is it bogus? Because you read one well-known crackpot. That you read one guy who's made a career out of trying to erase the history of the Jewish people. Literally, his book is called like The Invention of Israel, The Invention of the Jewish People. Like you read one.
That's confirmation bias, and it was surprising there to learn that she's actually Jewish. I was very surprised to hear her claim that she comes from a Jewish family. But yeah, confirmation bias is when you want to believe that your people are wrong. You look for a crackpot. Doesn't matter that he has no expertise or to use that dirty word, expertise, that he has no, that he's completely wrong. and can base it on nothing. Okay, she can say
you don't even have to say he's wrong. He's just one historian versus thousands of others. You know, I'll give you so many history books. On my wall
fails
here,
common sense.
On my wall here, I have a National Geographic map of the temple and the history of the first temple, the second temple, and then the Islamic conquest on top of that. Like, this is National Geographic here, girl. So it's like, you know, you want to take one guy who's a well-known crackpot.
The story of the Jewish people is so well documented. We've got 4,000 years of documentation from Abraham to the present, and from the Roman conquest of Jerusalem to the stories that we have that have been preserved of generation to generation of passing down of Jewish tradition and communities moving from place to place in Europe and being kicked out sometimes and moving for economic opportunity and other times. I mean, this is one of the most well documented stories of anthropology, of humankind, an ancient people that has actually had its story written down from generation to generation continuously. And the crackpot comes and says, oh, it's all a lie, and so is the Exodus. And I guess she's on social media so she can get that heard by however many people hear
her. Okay, so basically, but on the other hand, let's give credit to this guy who has written a book that has undermined the story of the Jewish people, and this Jewish girl has succumbed to it. Now, maybe it's a confirmation bias, like you say, but it doesn't matter. Somebody's written a book. It has gotten into her hands. She's now written another book based on these ideas, and that just goes to show you how powerful the narrative war is. You could get a book into a young person's mind like this, and it'll erase their mind and erase 4,000 years of Jewish history. And she's lost, and she's become an enemy of the Jewish people.
Yeah. This is what we're dealing with every single day. And I see it in states around the US and on campuses around the US. It doesn't matter what argument you bring. It doesn't matter what truth you bring, because all truth goes out the window. All facts go out the window. You cannot win. Israel's not going to win its war against the jihad in the court of public opinion, because it's fighting truth against lies. And there are 7 different types of lies, or 70 types of lies, depending on who's listening, who wants to hear what. I mean, we saw in the very 2 weeks after October 7th, you had spokesmen for Hamas on international television saying, yes, we did it. We did everything that we broadcast on Telegram, and we'll do it again 1,000 times until we've destroyed Israel. And at the same time, within 24 hours, you had other spokesmen out there saying, all of that story is lies. It's Zionist propaganda. The murders and the rapes didn't happen, and no babies were killed or beheaded or burnt, and all of that.
And that Israel bombed its own civilians. Israel bombed its own civilians, like the
Israel. Right. It was the Hannibal. The Hannibal protocol. Israel is the one that killed its own people, and you heard that on Piers Morgan, and you heard him believing it. So it doesn't matter. You can't. The way to win this war is not through debate. It's destroy your enemy. Destroy your enemy, and then have all these academics have their conversations in their ivory towers, and it doesn't matter anymore because the threat is gone. The threat needs to be dealt with physically, and all of this gab, talk. It's not going to win.
I will throw out that there's another way to win this war. Okay, because together, I've come to the conclusion, we've discussed this, that legitimacy oftentimes equals security. If you're not legitimate, you have a hard time fighting. If you're legitimate, you have every right to fight as much as you want. And in order to get legitimacy, one of the main things you need to do is to speak in clarity. If you're speaking out of 2 sides of your mouth, if you send out a confusing signal, it's hard for you to fight. So you're saying destroy your enemies. And I'm saying say what you intend to do. I intend to destroy my enemies. I intend to take over Gaza and liberate it and occupy it first militarily, and then make a civilian claim on it and say this is part of Israel, and subsume it back into Israel like it was before 2005, and even better. And when you speak with clarity and you explain to people what you're going to do and do it, right? Then that's the formula for real victory.
1,000%.
Right?
1,000%.
Clarity, and then smart policy. If you have bad policy or confusing policy, and you're confusing, this is what Israel does. It has confusing policy and confusing efforts to legitimate right? To legitimize, like its lingo is confusing. That leads to delegitimization. That also leads to anti-Semitism because that is perceived as weakness. And weakness, as you and I have discussed many times, is a trigger for anti-Semitism. Okay, when the enemies sense that they can destroy Israel and the Jewish people, that's when they come out. And so when you want to tap down anti-Semitism, you have to show an Israeli strength, Israeli smart policy, and clarity of messaging, clarity and unity of messaging.